Hello everyone, welcome to the Open Day. Thanks very much everyone for taking the time out of a sunny Saturday to be here. We're very happy to have you here. My name's Harry. I will be your MC for today. We've got quite an exciting agenda with a number of great speakers and then a number of exciting exhibits taking place afterwards as well. So just some housekeeping. If any of you guys need the bathroom, you can go through those doors and to the right. And if you need the fire exit, through the doors to the left. Today we're going to work through a couple of things. Phones off is a good place to start. So we're going to have, I'll say a couple of words and then we'll invite Jamie Beaton, the CEO and founder of Crimson Global Academy, to say a few things. We'll have our principal, John Morris. We're going to go for a deep dive inside the classroom and have one of our teachers speak through what it's like to teach online, and then from the student side as well, we're going to have a student panel. You'll have seen some smiling faces on some posters. We're going to have some of them come up on stage and talk about what their life is like studying at CGA, and then we're going to go through some of our technology and really what an online high school looks like and why it's different from, say, the online classroom that some of you guys might have already experienced. But to kick it off, I want to show you guys this photo of some of our smiling students on one of our recent community meetups. A question I often get asked is about what it's like to make friends online. And actually the thing that's really surprised me the most is that it's not difficult. In fact, some of the students are primed to make friends online. It feels very natural. And you can see there the smiling faces. We did a competition where we had to show what our favourite food was as a virtual background. So you can see me with my curry in the top right corner, but a couple of other sushi rolls and things like that floating around. But it was actually a great way to start the day this morning. I got an email from one of our existing parents, and this seems to happen a bunch of times. It's almost on repeat in a way that I feel like maybe people are playing a practical joke on me, because I get almost the same email. And the email roughly goes, I wasn't so sure about online learning. I didn't know if it would work for me, or we tried online learning, it didn't really work in the past, but something about this is so special and so different. And I want to read you this email actually from one of our lovely parents, Kath. Kath had previously enrolled her son Bernie into one of our maths classes last year and he loved it. This year, she was really trying to encourage him to take English. And he said, Mum, poetry, reading, essays, it's not my thing. I don't want to do English. But actually, one of his friends enrolled in the class and said, Bernie, you've got to try it. It's actually really fun. So Bernie missed the first week of class and joined for the second week of class. And I got this email this morning. So Kath says, Harry, Bernie has never enjoyed English. This week the class has been discussing poetry, which Bernie thinks is an absolute bore. I felt certain that he would find this English class boring and laborious. But on quite the contrary, I've never seen Bernie so delighted, bouncing out of lessons with so much enthusiasm and energy. Bernie describes that unlike many of the other online classes he's tried, whether it be his former physical school or some of the other online providers, his teacher brings, let me see this, is a strong presence on the screen. Maybe it's her lighting and camera angles, but maybe it's more that she's just such a wonderful communicator. And a quote from Bernie, the teacher calls on everyone. In such a small class, it's so engaging, it's so inviting, and the pace is perfectly structured. She explained things really well, and it's actually fun. Suffice to say, from Kath here, Bernie is engaged. It sounds like this teacher has a lot of online experience. She's a seasoned communicator, but whatever is happening here, Bernie says she is hands down the most engaging online, in fact, teacher that he's ever worked with, and he expects that this is likely to become his favourite class. Meanwhile, Bernie and I's dad are absolutely smacking our gob saying, what have you done to my child? And this sort of story is something that we get on really a weekly basis, and this is why I'm part of this organisation, is because I love working with the students and hearing stories like this. So we're going to start now with Jamie Beaton, the man who kicked this all off. Crimson started 7 years ago and has worked with many talented students around the world, and it's been a very natural extension of that to launch the online high school. So without further ado, can everyone please give a warm round of applause for Jamie Beaton.
Fantastic. So today I'll give you a bit of a run through as to kind of why we started CGA, a bit of the philosophy behind it, some of the observations I've seen around the world that have kind of flowed into this, and kind of where we are now, which is, I guess, pretty exciting for you guys. So I guess just a bit of brief background on me. Growing up, learning was a big part of my childhood. So my mum was very involved in my education up to the age of about 12 or 13. So I used to do a lot of reading, and probably when I was 9, 10, 11, my mum would know my history content, social studies content, probably as much as I did. And we would sit in places like Wendy's, and she would test me on various subjects and stuff before my exams. So in my family, education was always a very special thing, and it was seen as kind of the most important way to progress in your career and opportunity, that kind of thing. So I guess that was a really important piece. Now, moving into high school, my aspiration was to stay within New Zealand, probably do medicine at a local university, which was really the goal. And back in 2012, if you're a talented academic student, medicine, engineering, law, maybe commerce, these are some of the areas that you would be shooting for, typically locally. And so that was kind of the wild goal that I had when I was 14. Now, I bumped into the student, actually, who was dux of my school, an American citizen who was 18, and he'd just gotten into Yale University. And basically, he told me, hey, Jamie, you should actually consider looking overseas, because there's many great opportunities afar, particularly in America, but, in different countries. So that conversation kind of kicked me off to be thinking about, what that would look like and what it takes to get into these global schools. So from there, I kind of went hard on the A-level subjects. So I took 10 A-levels when most students do usually 3 or 4, did a lot of extracurriculars, leadership activities, and then applied to a wide range of schools in the US, the UK, Middle East, Canada, but also New Zealand and Australia. And I really had no idea how it would go, but after getting into all of the schools, I guess it was clear that my approach through high school had really worked quite well. And I guess some interesting things about my high school journey. When I was, in my last year, I had tutors in 7 different subjects. And I remember quite distinctly comparing what it was like sitting in a group class with 30 students compared to my small group learning experiences with these various tutors, and the quite radical difference in speed that I would go at in these different learning environments. And I became a little bit frustrated with some of my subjects at school, where I just felt like I wasn't really making much progress despite having to turn up every day and go through these classes. So fast forward to Harvard. I guess the thing about Harvard that was quite mind-blowing, beyond, I guess, the many obvious things about being in this kind of place you only hear of in the movies, is that many of the students that I met had encountered similar challenges in their physical skills. They felt that they weren't particularly personalized to them. They weren't going at the kind of pace they wanted to. Often the school had various constraints on how fast they could learn and develop, and they couldn't take certain subjects, like, say, computer science or advanced math. So I guess that was kind of in the back of my mind. And around this time, we were already sending a lot of students from different countries to these top universities. And so I was seeing these patterns amongst my Crimson students and amongst my fellow Harvard students as well. So fast forward to Stanford. Now, at Stanford, I did my MBA and also an education master's degree. And in this environment, I came across the online high school that had been started at Stanford. And I was really interested in this because up until this point, I'd only considered online learning through a tutoring context, helping people alongside school, but not necessarily providing the full school experience. But in America, for many years, there's been a number of these providers that have offered various online schools. But I was very excited by this one at Stanford because it had 800 students, but it was the 5th highest ranked high school in all of America, and it was fully online. And actually Elon Musk, the founder of Tesla, has one of his children there, for example, back then. And I was curious as to why this didn't exist anywhere else, particularly in a place like New Zealand, Australia, etc., where we have many ambitious families and not that many schooling options. So that was, really interesting. Then I progressed to Oxford, and at Oxford, my Rhodes Scholarship was focused on what drives student outcomes and student satisfaction in online schooling. So I kind of took this curious discovery I had at Stanford and then went really deep on, what actually drives a good school. So I did a literature review looking back over to the last 20 years of, all these various schools around the world and what drove their success. And those experiences led to really the launching of CGA. Now, we launched the school in partnership with Tomohiro Hoshi, who heads the Stanford Online High School, and he's been really integral in helping us develop and really build the curriculum, and make a lot of these decisions in the earlier days. So I guess jumping into kind of what we're trying to achieve here. In New Zealand, there are many ambitious students with great potential, and over the last 7 years, we've sent about almost 400 to different Ivy League schools, Oxford, Cambridge, other top universities around the US. And it's clear to me that there's a lot of ambition within the community. But if you think about many of the physical schools, even the top private schools here in Auckland, most students don't really find it to be a very academically highly charged environment. And there's only a couple of kids in every year group that are traditionally aiming for some of these global opportunities. And so for many of my Crimson students sitting in various schools around Auckland and New Zealand, they're often finding this kind of challenging. And so our goal with CGA is to make sure that every student across the country and also the world has access to, two leading international qualifications, the A-levels and the AP. So A-levels is the one that I use to get into these global universities, and the AP is the American curriculum. And we're the only school to offer the AP within New Zealand, and it's very popular for a number of different subjects. So I guess, what I want to focus on is making sure that students growing up in New Zealand have access to the kind of school and quality that you might get in Shanghai or in New York at the very, very top schools. And that's kind of what we've built with CGA so far. So now, in our school, there are two types of ways to enroll. There's part-time and full-time. And for many of you in the audience, you might be thinking about, these two options and wondering what's right for you. So generally, part-time is you stay at your physical school you're currently in, and you take additional subjects online with CGA. About 75% of our students fit in that part-time category, and they do this because they want to continue to be at their physical school. For example, maybe they want to do sports with their friends, etc., things like this, but then they want to have that supercharged academic experience and take those extra international subjects. Particularly in New Zealand with the NCA, which isn't as recognized internationally, many of our families are choosing CGA for that international quality. And so on the frame of part-time, I'll now briefly talk about kind of how extra subjects plays into admission. So when you think about the world's best schools, Stanford, Princeton, Harvard, etc., the criteria is very clear, right? Academic excellence. And there are some differences, but essentially one of the key factors is how well you do relative to your environment. So when I applied to these schools overseas and I had 10 A-levels and most students had 3 or 4, it was very clear to them that I'd gone above and beyond for many years, and therefore they wanted to admit me. Many of our Crimson students have followed in the footsteps of this kind of strategy, and that's really kind of crucial, I guess, as university admissions have become more and more competitive around the world. So I guess in high school, my main subjects were the math and sciences. That's where I started. But then I took things like business studies, economics, English literature, things like thinking skills as well. And having very good foundations in math and English is quite essential. So for many of the students here, if you're aspiring to work in things like technology, if you want to work for autonomous driving companies like Tesla, etc., having rigorous math is very important, up to usually the further maths level. Most New Zealand schools don't offer A-levels, and then even those schools, only a handful offer further maths as a subject. But if you want to get into schools like Cambridge or Oxford, further maths is just required for most of these subjects. So on the math side, really advancement there is very big, and math is our most popular subject at CGA, followed closely by English, which is something that students have different feelings towards. We heard from one student who didn't like it previously but really enjoys it within our context. But I would emphasize that English is very, very useful as you go out into the workplace, whether you want to do entrepreneurship, whether you need to just write memos within a company, things like this, pretty mission critical skill. So this graph illustrates roughly how many A-levels correlates to what kind of candidacy you have for various top universities. So, we just sent one of our students from Pinehurst to Cambridge for medicine. And that student had a number of A-levels with A-star grades. One of our students just got into Harvard, had 6 A-stars with A's. So 6 A-levels with A-stars. So when you think about the number of subjects that you're developing, 3 or 4 is kind of like the average. So if you go to Britain and you go to British schools around the country, 3 or 4 is kind of what the typical student would have. If you want to be quite competitive for this top tier of school, leading Australian medical schools, US, UK universities, things like this, 5, 6 is kind of where you want to be. And then, pushing beyond that is really getting into that like Stanford, Harvard kind of tier. Now, the easiest way to get through this is to think about high school as a bit of a marathon, not a sprint. Many of my students will begin their A-levels and their IGC subjects when they're about 12, 13, 14, and they'll really get the ball rolling nice and early, and then be able to take these over many years, so it's not as stressful. In many Auckland schools, you can't actually begin these subjects till you're kind of like 16, 17, and what that means is you're kind of compressing a lot of these high-stakes exams into only 2 years, when really you want to space it over 4 or 5 years, which is an important part of our strategy for our students. So I guess, this is more context on this trend of more A-levels, but I want to give you 2 kind of quite concrete examples to end today. I talk a lot about these global universities, and it can sound a bit, ridiculous, a bit unbelievable. So I want to tie it back to some very clear examples of just how this has been playing out. And it isn't our first rodeo. We've been doing this for about 7.5 years now in New Zealand, and so we have a wave of students that have gone from New Zealand schools through Crimson to these global universities. So Samir was the first example I'll talk about. He grew up in Hamilton. He was at Hamilton Boys High School, an NCA school. Now, because NCA isn't particularly internationally competitive, we recommended him to do 6 extra A-levels, so we trained him in those online. He scored very good results in them, and he topped the world in 2 of them, business studies and also English language. From there, he went on to also become an NZQA Premier Scholar, because often when you have strong A-level results, you can do well in the domestic scholarship exams too. He did various other things, became head boy ducks of his school, went off to Harvard, and now where he's now graduated, but he also got into Stanford and 3 other Ivy League schools. And Samil's a very, very powerful example because actually when he was 15, he picked up AP Computer Science. And AP is that American curriculum that I mentioned that CGA offers, which you can't do in any other school in the country. We recommended this to him because we thought he could actually be very good in computer science, but his school didn't offer that subject. He took AP Computer Science, he scored a 5. Then at Harvard, he went on to actually do Applied Math Computer Science. And now as a 23-year-old, he just raised an investment round for a startup company, and he's working in Silicon Valley with computer science being the key skill he's using in developing a startup. So this is a good example of a student who, because he had access to the right subject, in this case AP Computer Science, and of course various guidance, he was able to go from Hamilton to Harvard to now Silicon Valley and be on quite a remarkable career trajectory. We hear a lot about Elon Musk these days, so I want to give you the second example of Zong. Now Zong was at Maclean's, and he was a student with Crimson as well, part-time. With Zong, he was doing very well on the academics, but his trajectory was not fast enough to get into these top schools by itself. So we recommended a variety of extra subjects. He finished with 7 A-levels, and he also scored top in the country across 3 A-levels. And he went off to Caltech, which is the California Institute of Technology, one of the world's best engineering schools. He then got onto MIT. He got a 4.0 GPA at Caltech, so he's got into a master's program at MIT. But his work experience is what's very exciting. As a young student, age 23, he worked at Google first in the autonomous driving team called Waymo. So Google has the most advanced technology for autonomous driving. So the cars we'll be using in 7-8 years, probably being developed here right now. So he was on that team, and now he's actually working for Tesla. Obviously the incredible car company that we hear a lot about in the media. So this is a good example of a student who has gone from New Zealand all the way to the US with rigorous academic support, and now is in a very thriving career. So whether or not you're aiming for the best schools in the US, UK, or you want to get into a domestic medical school here in, say, Auckland Medical School, you really want to think about how do you get the most rigorous subjects possible. Now, with your subjects, you don't just want to take a ton of subjects and do badly in them. You want to focus on quality first, and then you want to add more. So generally at CGA, we really think about A as sort of the pass a lot of the time, and we really don't recommend students take so many subjects that they kind of stretch them too far. So you want to start with the quality and then add more subjects over time as you develop. And so far we've had 2 different sets of exams come out, and this benchmarks really our students to be the highest performing of any school in the country academically, even from our first 2 cohorts. So the first cohort, the A-level results. So in this cohort, 75% of CGA students scored an A. That compares to, say, King's College, where 25% of students score an A, ACG or Pinehurst, where 50% score an A. So really, really strong achievement. And the average is actually 92. And you can see both the full-time and the part-time kids really very consistently delivering results. And if you want to see a good school, and I looked at this in my research, you don't just want to look at their top grades, because if I just bring in a rock star student, they can get really high grades, right? So you want to look at also how is all students doing? How's the bottom 25% doing, etc. as well? What is the minimum grades the school's achieving? And so for that, if you look at our recent GCSE results, 100% of our kids scored an A or a B. So there wasn't a single student who scored below a B, and 70% scored an A, and 45% of students scored the highest possible grade. Again, this is the strongest of any A-level results in the country. This is really no surprise, because we do have a really strong culture and academic achievement, and our school is led by John Morris and the legendary A-level team we have, and you'll hear from him soon. But that just gives you a sense of kind of the academic firepower within the school. Now, it's been just under a year, but we already have more than 300 students. Up until this point, the biggest private school first year was about 70, so this is really quite an exciting phenomenon across the country. And we've had students enrolling from schools like ACG, St. Cuthbert's, Maclean's, AIC, the 2 Westlakes. And then also we've had rural families all across the country jumping into CGA as well. So there's a really interesting combination of students that are joining this very vibrant learning environment that we're developing. And then, of course, the global piece. This I haven't touched on much, but I do want to emphasize that one of the most transformative parts of going to study at a place like Harvard is that you're with kids from all around the world. And so your perspective goes from being New Zealand to the whole world stage. And suddenly, you understand different cultural backgrounds, you've got a network around the world, etc. And so what I wanted to do in creating CGA was to create a school that basically gives students the opportunity to meet kids from around the world while living in, say, New Zealand. So we've got students from Russia, from China, from the US, from Tokyo, Brazil, Costa Rica, a wide variety of countries. And so in our learning environment, you're actually having those multicultural experiences. You're launching extracurriculars with peers from around the world. And that is quite exciting and prepares you nicely to thrive in these very diverse university environments, because many of our Crimson students are not going to be living in New Zealand for all the years of their life. They're going to have their career in different parts of the world over time. So with that, I'll pass back to Harry to kick things off with our next speaker. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jamie. You can see that we are lucky to have someone with so much energy and enthusiasm and passion for education leading our school. And what I find exciting is that there are thousands of people that vie for Jamie's time and attention, but every single CGA student gets access to someone like Jamie on a daily basis. We'll talk about this later, but on our student community portal, there's actually a place where students can talk to Jamie directly and ask him any question they want, whether it be about subjects that they take, career pathways, or just general life advice. So, it makes me proud to have someone like Jamie at the forefront of our school and giving access to students to learn from someone like him. And what's also really powerful is when you pair someone like Jamie with one of the most respected educators in New Zealand, who is Sir John Morris. Not quite Sir, but I think he's not far away from that yet. So John Morris has been a leading educator in New Zealand for a number of years, and we are very lucky to have him as the academic leader within our school, making sure that students are always put first and that we are optimizing our learning environment to make sure that students' school lives are a success. So please give a warm welcome to John Morris to talk through our school. Thanks, John.
First, I have to master this machine here. Yeah, okay. Just a brief introduction. Welcome to everybody, by the way. Great to have you all here today, and thanks for your interest in CGA. There's a little bit of background there on myself. I wasn't a grammar old boy, actually. I went to Kelston Boys way out west as a student, and went from there through University at Auckland, history major, and did a master's degree there, and then on to teaching from there on. Went through a process of teaching the classroom, obviously, heads of departments, into deputy principal, and then principal of 2 schools, Takapuna Grammar and then Auckland Grammar School, and now here at CGA. So that's my life, my working life, actually, over 40 years of such. As a new school, really important that we set up a vision for CGA. Now, Jamie's mentioned bits and pieces of this, and I'll just go through what I think, anyway, we'll be aiming for. You need a vision for a school, particularly a brand new school, because it shows you what we want to be. We've been going a year, and I think we're making great strides in terms of the 7 critical features that I put down there. I think the first thing to push is that we didn't want to be just an ordinary school. We want to be a new kind of school and offer a new kind of education, one that was challenging all the way through, effective, and transformative for every single person, not just for a small group at the top, but for everybody that attended the school. Secondly, we wanted to provide access to cutting-edge 21st technology. That was an obvious thing, because we're part of an education technology company. So you can imagine the great technology experts that we have working at Crimson, and they're providing great stuff for the school and how it operates. And later on in this, Zach, who is one of our tech gurus, will explain a little bit about the technology. Thirdly, we want to develop the whole person. So while I've got no bones about saying we're a strong academic school, and that's the focus, and you can see that from the examination results that we've got there, but we also want to offer holistic education. And so when students leave CGA at the end of their time with us, they're ready and able to make a difference to society. That's the important thing. So a holistic approach to education. Fourthly, seeking to connect to a global learning environment. Well, I think Jamie's covered that, but worth saying that we've got students from over 20 countries around the world. So you can imagine trying to run a school when you've got different time zones like that. So it's tricky, but we do it and we get there well. It's also the cross-cultural understandings that come from being part of a global network there as well. So the friends, when they leave CGA, will have friends all over the world. We also want to aspire, number 5, for our students to be architects of their own lives. And that means giving them confidence, giving them independence, and also giving them resilience so that they can reach their potential. That's the really important part of being part of our school, so they can work through their own demands and get there at the very top. We want a diverse program of extracurricular, and again, Harry will talk a little bit about that later on, about the extracurricular, but that is also very, very important to us, and it's an important part of being in CGA. And then the 7th idea about the vision really was to create and foster a positive cultural school, a culture of school, and that does permeate the entire operation of it. The culture of a school is actually the spirit of a school. When you walk into a bricks and mortar school, you can feel what they're about, what they mean, what their niche is. Now, a bit difficult when you do that when you've got a virtual school, an online school, but that spirit of the school does actually come through in the lessons and the teachers that we've appointed. That's a really important part of things. And it's also the culture of a school is the key in recruiting and retaining the best teachers. That's really, really important to us. So moving on, an overview of our what makes a great school. Well, great teachers make a school great. It's not the other way around. And the great schools of our country have done that by having great teachers, and we're in the same boat as well. So creating a great school in terms of an overview, there are 5 things. And in fact, it doesn't matter whether it's a bricks and mortar school or a virtual school. The same 5 things apply. First of all, great teachers, and we'll talk a little bit about those in a minute, but that's crucial. Number 2, aspirational students. You don't have to be a genius like Jamie, okay? You don't. Not many of those around, you know? So you don't have to be a genius, but you do have to be aspirational. You have to want to get to the very top and do the very best you can. Thirdly, you need an internationally recognised curriculum. That, to me, is absolutely vital. It's why we don't use NCA. Fourthly, you need a safe, supportive environment. That's really important for us too. A bit more detail about that later. And we need effective leadership. And by leadership there, I don't just mean the leaders of the school as we see them in terms of executive principal or principal, but in the whole school as well. Students can be leaders as well, and that's really, really important. So first of all, looking at great teachers. So all those 5 things, I'll go through just briefly on each one. Firstly, great teachers. First of all, we started in February, myself and about 3 other staff. That was how we started. And one of the great things was we had to go and find some really great teachers, because that's the bottom line. And so we appointed 4 HODs, and we just appointed a 5th one now. We had English, social sciences, science, and mathematics. And then we've now appointed a head of commerce, because economics and business studies is a massively growing subject, and so we needed a separate department for them. But all those teachers, as you can see from the photos, are pretty experienced in terms of their experience in schools, and not just here, but also around the world. So Barry Goff, who has been intimately involved in the development of the English curriculum, really, really strong teacher, doing fantastically well. Andrew Carlsberg, I won't say anything about him because he'll tell you all about himself very shortly when he speaks. But again, he's taught in the Czech Republic as well as the UK and over here. Cheryl Husband, our head of science, has taught in the US as well as here, and a great experienced teacher there as well. David Story has taught in the UK, taught at New Plymouth Boys High as well as senior college, where he was head of science, head of maths. And Rebecca Close, we've appointed as the head of commerce. She's based in the UK, and she's been head of economics at a very big private girls' school in Portsmouth in England. We have on our staff now 40 teachers. A lot of them are part-time, and part-time because sometimes they teach in a normal school, then come to us, but also because they're doing different things and just want to do part-time teaching. It may be that they're on different leave for different reasons, and they come to us, and we really, really appreciate them. And I want to just pick on a few of those people there just to give you an idea of their experience. If you look on at the top row, you've got Kenny Knight. Now, Kenny's over here now with us, and he'll be around. You can talk to Kenny. He's one of our deans. He's the dean of the New Zealand-based and Australian-based school. Also a chemistry teacher too, great chemistry teacher. He was DP for a while at James Cook High School in South Auckland, but mainly at Maclean's College. Next to him is Dr. Andrew Daniel. He's based in the UK. Now, he was principal of a very big private school in Wales. He resigned from there, and we picked him up as he's our lead person in the UK, because we have got teachers based in the UK and also in Asia, as well as New Zealand and Australia. And so he's in charge of that particular group. If you go to the very end, Steve Walker, this guy was Jamie's mentor, you see. And he taught at King's College. He was head of English at King's College, where Jamie was. But he's a degree person from Cambridge in the UK and a great teacher. Tim Smith, I'm not sure if Tim's here today, but Tim is one of our deans as well. Here he is. He's just arrived. Well done. Good turn up, Tim. Tim's a biology teacher. He's going to run the biology department for us, as well as be an academic counsellor for the school as well. And Andrew Carlsberg is here. I mentioned him again. Gosh, you come up everywhere, Andrew. I don't know. And Jenny Coates, she lectures at Nottingham University as well as teaches over there, and she's part of our chemistry in the UK as well. So a number of really, really talented people involved in our staff. The person that you mentioned, Harry, is a teacher that we appointed from Australia called Emily Fitzgerald, and she's an amazingly young teacher and doing a great job. So those of you doing English or history, because she's also part of the history department, you'll come across her as well. So a lot of parents will be saying, well, is my child, suitable for an online environment? And it's a good question to ask, because it is a little bit different. It is a little bit different, particularly if you want to go full-time. If it's part-time, then it's a good balance. You can work between your normal school and what we can offer as well. But the qualities of a successful student, I think, are very similar to normal school. Strong organisational skills. You've got to be organised. If you think of your good students in your normal bricks and mortar school, they're highly organised. They know what they're doing, and they plan, and they know exactly when things are due. Secondly, good time management. If your child's got good time management, it doesn't have to be nagged by mum or dad to do some work. I think probably most kids probably do need a bit of nagging, to be honest, but it's nice still if you don't have to be, okay? So these four here, they're just smiling because they know that. So they still have to be nagged a little bit, but hopefully you still can go out there and do it. And that ties in with independent study habits as well. Being able to sit down, get the work done, get it done on time, and no issues whatsoever. So that ties in also with being self-motivated. And I know these guys are. They might pretend they're not, but they are self-motivated. They're really involved in their studies. And you must be able to prioritise things. Don't put things off. Don't prevaricate. Get stuck in. Get the work done. That's important too. Strong work ethic. We all need that. Aspirational. That's really the key, really. And effective communicator. You might think, well, why do you want to? Well, you do have to be a communicator. You have to actually be able to talk to the teachers. Remember, you're in a small class. And I'm sure Andrew Carlsberg will talk about this, but in those small classes, there's nowhere for you to hide. You can't go to the back of the room and go have a sleep or a snooze or whatever, because you're front and centre. When you've got average class size of 6 or 7, you are totally therein. And so, you've got to be a communicator. You've got to be interactive in the classroom. You have to be. And you have to have focus. You have to be there concentrating on the whole thing. And we've got, and I'm sure Zach will mention this, we have some technology that will tell us if students are actually focused or if they're wandering around and thinking, well, there's other things in my head. This is the artificial intelligence type stuff. So those things are really, really important in the way that what we can offer to students as well. So what type do we look for? We've put down there, we started off, and I'll be honest about this, we started off thinking we'd just be attracting year 11, 12 and 13 students. In fact, over the last 5 months, there have been massive influx and interest from younger students. And so we've had to sort of think about what we can offer to them. And so we do prefer students to be 12 or 13 before they come to us. But I have to say, if you're exceptional, we do have a couple of younger kids as well who are already starting some advanced study. So in general, though, we're looking at 12 and 13-year-olds as coming in and then working through. We want them to be driven, and we want them to be organised, and I've mentioned that as well. But the other critical thing here is the maturity element. You might be 11, and you might be really clever, but are you mature enough to work in an online environment with probably potentially older students in your class? That's a really important thing to think about. Are you mature to be able to handle that sort of situation? And we can judge that with interviews and by talking to parents and so on, but it's in a very important part. Obviously, you've got to have academic potential, and if you're English as a second language, you really need an IELTS of 6 to come into a senior A-level type program. So that's something to bear in mind as well. It helps if you've got good behavioural. I'm sure these four have got good behavioural at their schools, so that's not a problem. And in fact, to be honest, an online environment, that is not an issue. It's one thing that attracts teachers. They don't have to worry too much about that because most kids are motivated and want to do well. And I just want to make a couple of things. No matter whether, it doesn't matter whether you're part-time or full-time, attendance is mandatory because we are a fully registered school with the ministry. So there has to be attendance taken and reported to the ministry. So if you think, well, I can be a part-time student, I don't feel too good the next day, I won't turn up, that's not on. You know, we need you there, it's committed for that situation. Right, the third section, an internationally recognised curriculum. This is one of my most important points, I think, because when students leave CGA, they'll be operating in an international marketplace, whether it's for going to a top university or going for a job. And so your qualifications have to have international currency. And that's what NCA will not give you. And that's why we have students from NCA schools coming to us wanting to do an international qualification. So the idea of having international currency is really, really, really important. So how do we do this? Okay, there are 3 organisations which operate the A-level program. One is Cambridge, one is something called AQA, and the other one is called Pearson EdXL. And we've chosen Pearson EdXL for a number of reasons over the others. It's equivalent, all these 3 are equivalent, by the way. So Universities New Zealand, which is the overriding body of universities in New Zealand, accept all those 3 qualifications as equivalent, exactly the same. It's also, Pearson we chose for one big reason, it's recognised particularly for its rigour and also for its challenge. And that really will stand you in good stead when you're applying for overseas universities. Now there are 4 stages to our program here, and we've put in a new one, which is there the pre-IG. We've called the pre-IG. So this is for our 12 and 13-year-olds. And basically, this is a part-time program only at the moment. It may well become full-time, but it's part-time at the moment. So therefore, students will normally do just 1 or 2 subjects. It's a 1-year program, and at the end of that year, there is an examination, and that will tell us whether the student is well and good enough to move on to the full IG program. The grading is done on a 1 to 9 basis now, not A to E, it's a 1 to 9, 9 being the highest and 1 being the lowest. The idea behind that is it differentiates at the very top level and also even in the middle level as well as to, you know, if you're right to move on or not. So generally 12 to 13-year-olds are involved in that program. And then you move on to the International GCSE, which is a standalone qualification in its own right as well. If you are a full-timer, with us, you would probably do 5 or 6. We have one student at the moment who started off doing 8 IG subjects. Now, she's based in Japan and has done brilliantly in all of them. She's also doing some AS subjects as well. So she's really, really onto things and doing brilliantly. But generally, 5 to 6 subjects with no upper limit is what you can fit into the timetable. Again, it's a 1-year program. And it does, as I say, function as a qualification in its own right, but more importantly, it provides you with the skills and knowledge to move on to the international AS level. So if you're 14, you could start the international GCSE, and normally 14 to 15-year-olds. And then you move into the full A-level program, which is the gold standard of international qualifications without any argument. So the AS level is a 1-year program. It's the first half. You've got to do both. You cannot jump straight through to an A2. You can't do that. You have to do the AS first. It's a 1-year program, and that counts 50% of your final mark. A2 is the other 50%. Now, generally, if you were in the UK, as Jamie mentioned, you'd probably only do three A-levels will get you into, with A stars, will get into a university, a top one. But we encourage them to do more than that. So, for example, at grammar, everybody did five A-levels, no exception. I think probably the Maclean's similar. But we would do the same here. We can offer 5 A-levels easily. It is a qualification. So if you're based in New Zealand, which you all are, if you get AS and then decide, I don't want to do A2, I want to go straight to university, it stands as a university entrance qualification. Okay, so as a year 12 program, you could go, if you did the A-level, you could go straight to university after studying that. The grading for that is A to E, which is the more traditional one as well. Having done that, you then move on to the international A-level. You'll carry those same subjects through, or you might drop one that you didn't do too well in and pick up an extra AS, so you get your breadth of subject choice is still there. But there's no upper limit. You can do as many as you want with that. And then the grades are E to A star. So that A star is over 90%, and that gives you your top 2 or 3% in the country getting those, or in the world actually, not just the country. I said it's the gold standard of qualifications. It is. It's the most highly recognised qualification internationally to get into any top university. So it's a really good one to do, obviously. So that's our Commit program, and it's going really well. And everybody seems to be enjoying the programs as well and working hard. It is rigorous, it's challenging, it's quite demanding. So moving on to the fourth point, which was a safe environment. And basically, what we aim for here is that positive, supportive, and inclusive environment. That's really important to us. We're not just an academic sort of factory that pushes kids out. There's a lot more to us than that, and you'll see about that later on when Harry and Zach talk to you a little bit about things like that. But importantly, the way that I look at it is that students who come to our school can be themselves. That's important. It's a diverse community. It really is, but they can just be themselves. Also, it's important that the students know that the school cares for them as well, and that's within our pastoral care network, which is very, very strong. We are a limitless, interconnected global school. The sky's the limit, really, for students that come to us. That global network of friends you'll develop is really fantastic. And we do have overseas connections too with other schools. We have a connection with Dulwich schools. They run 10 or 11 schools in Asia, particularly in China, and we have a strong connection with them as well. So it is limitless, it is interconnected. We are part of a global learning network. That is really a very, very important part and aspect of CGA. And then leadership, and I sort of hinted at this. I mean, we've got 4 pictures there, but actually the leadership team is much broader than that. So Mark Phillips is over here. Wave your hand there, Mark. Mark is a former deputy principal at Maclean's College, former head of maths there as well. Done some teaching at university as well, and we're very lucky to have Mark as principal of the school. And then we've got Kevin Park, who's hiding behind a computer over there. Kevin is the head of admissions, so he actually is the one that probably a lot of you would talk to in terms of coming to our school, and he's got a varied background working for Vodafone and Ice House and a number of other companies around New Zealand. Max is here. Max Thompson's over there as well, deputy principal, former head of science at Auckland Grammar School, and then went over to teach in Middle East, where he taught for 2 years and then came back and joined us here as deputy principal. But the leadership team consists of a lot more than those 4 people there. All of our teachers, in fact, you could call our leaders of learning. I'm not so sure it's a pretty trendy term now, but it's partly true. Leaders of learning is what you look at as our teachers. And then we have an operations team, which is led by Harry over here. Zach, who comes and goes at the back there, he's sort of preparing himself for this. And then we've got Tyler Hasemore there, who's just joined us from after a career with PwC, and he's in charge of examinations. So, we have an extended group of people who are leaders within the company. I guess my point about leadership is it's all about people. And you know the Maori proverb about hei tangata? It's all about people all the way through. It's also about trust and developing a high trust community with accountability, creating a culture and an ethos that is really, really important. And it's up to us as the staff of the school to develop a set of values that permeate the operation of the school. That's your culture, that's your ethos. And communication between all aspects of the school is also really important. That's the glue that holds everything together. So good communication within the school is really, really important. So what does CGA offer? Well, the subjects that are available here, this is a growing list of subjects, okay? It depends what students want. When you look at what we offer, it's really what you as students want. And if you want a subject, I'll give an example. We have a student who is here today that wanted to do some French. Correct? Now, we weren't offering French. However, we are offering French. We've got a teacher from my old school who's prepared to come in and teach that, and we're really delighted. She's head of the Spanish and French department at Grammar, and she's coming in to teach French to Max, which is something that I'm looking forward to. You had your first lesson? Did it go all right? Pretty good? Yeah, okay, that's good. So that's important. So the subjects that are there, as Jamie mentioned, maths is number 1 in terms of interest, in terms of numbers, English, and then the sciences. But we do offer economics as a growing subject for us, really growing subject, and we will add subjects to it if there is enough interest in developing it. One thing we're looking at the moment is looking at Spanish as another language. Also, we're trying to get psychology introduced as a IGCSE subject, and then also law as an AS subject. There's a fair bit of interest in law, so we're working at that. If you're interested in pre-IG, there's 4 subjects that we can offer. 1 is English, 1 is maths, 1 is science, and 1 is computing. Those are the 4 subjects we can offer at pre-IG. Full-time or part-time, I think Jamie's probably covered that. You don't need to see that. It's really important, though, that we do offer that we're flexible. We can offer those two types of enrolment, really. And I think, at the moment we have mainly part-time. It's actually down to about 70% now. More full-timers are joining, about 30% now, which is good, and that's growing as well. I guess in the New Zealand scene, education scene, we are what's considered to be a disruptor. Our current generation of students are all from Generation Z, and they're digital natives. Is what? Hang on, have I gone too far? Go back. I need my technology. There we go. There's a disruption in education. Students really these days require that instant feedback. They want to know exactly what's going on. And when you've got a small environment of only 6 or 7 or 8 in the class, then that feedback is instant, it's immediate, and you can get that. It's really important. And the thing that's really important is that our education is synchronous. So all classes are live with teachers who are real live also. It's in real time. So there's not a lot of stuff that's been put to one side as a resource and you have to work on it. It is very, very important to realize that we are synchronous. It's in real time live teachers. So just to finish off from my part, why CGA? And some of this is really we've all covered. It's just a summation, really. Small, real-time classes built for interaction. One thing that you realize in an online classroom, you have to participate. In fact, at Stanford Online High School, where I went with Jamie in end of January, they give marks to students for interactivity, for their participation in the class. So if you just want to sit there and do nothing, then your marks will be less than they should be. So, it's that participation, interactivity. And that's why our teachers know that, and Andrew Carlsberg will know that, comment on the importance of that when he talks about what his classroom looks like. Second thing there, learning based on ability, not age, and maturity, I must have added in there. Maturity is important. Join full-time or part-time, we've covered that. The teachers, they are selected for engagement, for inspiration, and also for getting results. It's a real strength of our school. I would employ any of our teachers anywhere that I was head of a school. We've got such a strong group. And in the UK, I'll just give you an example. When we advertised in the UK for teachers, we only wanted 10 to start off with. We had 500 applications from the UK wanting to teach in our school. And that's amazing. And so we could pick and choose who we wanted. And so we've got some fantastic staff from there. I mentioned about the diverse, it's a global class. Classmates will be driven. They will challenge you. They will be competitive. It's competitive, but in a very supportive environment, and that's important as well. And the fact that we've been able to attract the best teachers means that we do have that academic capacity to offer subjects that, you may or may not be able to get at your normal school. So I think that's my bit. Happy to answer any questions afterwards or to meet people who want to talk more about the school. It'd be great to have you coming along and have a look. It would be really good to have some of the lessons that we record all lessons so you can see lessons, have some trial lessons and so on. So thanks for your attention, and I'll hold back to Harry.
Thank you. Thanks, John. You can see we're, again, lucky to have someone like John that leads our school. So just as a quick break, we've actually got a prize that we're going to give away. And the prize is some competitive time with none other than Jamie Beaton. Again, Jamie works with students all around the world, whether in New Zealand, over in the UK, or Asia, and everywhere in between. So we've actually got a fishbowl here. Which of our students, let's go, I'm going to choose you, Max, as the tallest standing out there. So Max, if you could dig into the bowl and see who's won a free consultation with Jamie, and we'll wait for you to pass it over. Do you want to read it out? Okay, I can read it out. So it might be a parent, maybe a student. And so the result here is that you'll get time to spend with Jamie talking about your career trajectory, subject choices, how you should be thinking about development and growth and opportunities you can get involved in. So do we have maybe a parent, maybe a student? Iris? Iris Elora? Yes? Round of applause for Iris. Well done, Iris. So after this, Iris, we will be in touch. I'll pass this back to you, Tyler, to organise a time to chat with Jamie, considering sitting right behind him, but we'll organise another time to speak. So now we'll move on to the teacher side of things. So we're very lucky to have Mr. Carlsberg, our Head of Social Sciences and our history teacher, come and talk to you about what teaching is like in an online environment. And as John has said, we're lucky to have some brilliant teachers. I think Andrew probably should have had a former career as an entertainer or a comedian maybe. So he's well known as one of the most engaging teachers online. That's not to downplay his impressive academic results as well. But Andrew is passionate about the success of our students, and he was saying just before that he loves the start of the new school year because students are shy. They're not sure what's going on, they're just getting up to speed, and he finds it a challenge to make sure that people are coming out of their shell and engaging in learning and engaging in the school environment. So a big round of applause for Andrew, who will talk you through our classroom. Thanks, Andrew.
Hello. So there's no pressure there whatsoever. I'm Andrew Carlsberg. I'm just a teacher, which means I'm the least important person who will be on the stage today, unless you're one of my students, Max. So I've got a little thingy here. Oh, well, that's not difficult. A wee bit about me. I'm a UK-trained teacher. It's quite a lot of us here in New Zealand, and I started my career in the UK before I went international. I went overseas. I went to the Czech Republic, where I started teaching international qualifications, the IGCSE, the AS and the A level, and the International Baccalaureate. And then I came to New Zealand, and I took on the hardest educational role of my life, which was as a stay-at-home dad. Dealing with teenagers is utterly easy in comparison to looking after baby girls. And then I came back into teaching. I find myself down in Dunedin, where I took on head of geography and head of social studies. And then an opportunity came up at CGA, and I decided to take that. It was a return to a more rigorous curriculum, teaching the IGCSE and the AS and moving away from NCEA, and now I'm here. So I guess that's my career so far. And I head up the social sciences department. So I help look after the historians, the geographers, the economists, the Commerce Department, who have recently held a bloodless revolution and left me, the psychologists as well. So that's me, that's what I do. This is my office, or as my children call it, the spare bedroom. This is where I teach from, and many of you who are going to learn in an online environment will have a space like this. I'd love to say that we're all digital, but we're not. My desk is festooned with pieces of paper. I tend to encourage my students that when they're in class, have a notepad and a pen as well. You know, the way our brains work, writing things down can have, it puts the information in your head in a different way. It'll stay there for longer. So yes, technology is a real aid in teaching, but we don't have to be always tech-focused. Get a pen and a piece of paper in your heads as well. So why did I join CGA? There's quite a lot of reasons why I joined CGA. I love the idea of going back and teaching a more rigorous curriculum, IGCSEs, AS and A levels, and I've done a startup school before. When I worked internationally, I was involved in starting up a high school, and it was the highlight of my career. It nearly killed me, but it was a phenomenal experience, and the opportunity to do that again was too big to pass up. And he's my boss, and I shouldn't suck up, but when you see John, when you see John's name attached to something, it has a certain amount of mana here in the educational community in New Zealand. He's quite good at what he does. So I ended up with CGA again. Okay. So I'll go back one. What is an online lesson like? I guess that's going to be really important for you if you're thinking about this. The first thing I would say is it's not that different to a bricks and mortar school. I think there are probably more similarities than there are differences. I will still have a chat with my students. I want to know what they're up to. You know, I want to know what they're doing in their lives. That's rapport. That's really important as a teacher. You need to know your kids, and they want to know about you. If you haven't got a rapport with your kids, how can you understand them? How can you teach them? So there's a young man down here, Max, who you'll hear from later. I met him for the first time today, which was fantastic. He's so much taller than I actually thought he was. But it's great to finally put, here's a man I think I know reasonably well. I mean, we chatted before we started about cycling and about rowing, because I know these are the things he does. And I was worried. When the online teaching, I was worried about doing it at first. Oh, am I going to lose that rapport, which I've always loved as a high school teacher? I haven't. It's still there, and I'm still enjoying it. So what different things happen in a lesson? The lessons move a lot more quickly in an online class than they would in a bricks and mortar school. As John has already mentioned, there is nowhere to hide. You cannot escape. I'm always looking at you. It's eye contact. You can't go and talk to your mate at the back of the classroom. There's nobody popping in to talk about who's on duty at playtime. We move quickly. And that's not just the nature of the class, but also the things that we do. There's no dead time. They're right there in front of me. Tasks tend to be a little bit shorter, a little bit snappier. And that's got to do with the students as well. I'm lucky to have really motivated and focused students. So it is bang, bang, bang. You go quite quickly through your content. Some of that is part of the model of how we teach. Max knows that he has to have done his, poor old Max, sorry. Max knows that he has to have done his reading before class, because if he hasn't, well, he'll make an idiot of himself. But that's the process. I'm going to set him some reading, and we're going to spend our time making sense and understanding that content. I'm not reinventing the wheel. You will all know, as parents and as students, everything you need to know is out there. You can access it on Wikipedia or YouTube or Google, but you need a teacher to help you to make sense of it, to understand it. That's what we do now. Teachers are becoming more gatekeepers of education than they are actually teachers. But don't try and teach yourself history for YouTube, for the love of God, please, because it won't be a very good education. What else do I want to say about what is it like online? I think that will probably do for the time being. Here is my class. This is my new IGCSE class. They've just started. Max is there. It was pointed out to me this morning that none of these children are smiling. Yeah, it may have been, I may occasionally have a bad dad joke. It may have been the fact that they'd just been set an assessment. I don't know, but I swear to God, they do smile occasionally in my classes, just not right now. So I really need to speak to the marketing guys and ask them to go back and find a happy, smiley lesson to show you. But these are my guys. We've got some students here in New Zealand, some in Australia. A couple of these guys are based in Japan. I love that. For example, the lady in the middle row at the very end is Sakura. She's based in Japan right now. It's absolutely freezing. And the young lady who is second to left is Millie. She's based up in the far north where it is absolutely boiling. And Sakura looks physically cold. I swear yesterday in class I saw mist coming out of her as she was speaking to me in class. But I love this. As a social scientist, the fact that I have got students all around the world, both talking about, all interacting and talking about global ideas, you don't get that very often in a bricks and mortar school. We live in a global world, and as Jamie indicated, you go to those top universities and you are going to interact with people who bring something from their culture, from their history, from their own learning. These guys are getting ahead there, and they're quite fun, but it is early in the year, obviously. So what is an online lesson like? How does it work? I think I've probably already talked about that, as I talk far too quickly. The one thing that I haven't added in is our expectations, and John has discussed that. We do have high expectations, he says, looking at some of the people who are clearly possible students. I do expect Max to do this, and I do expect Sakura and Millie and Nick, and I could go through their names. I have high expectations of them. If you don't expect from your students, you will not get it. And that's a big statement for a teacher. You need to work as hard as I do, please. What will students be studying in history? This is my pitch as a history teacher. This is my subject. I like my subject. I want more students to take history. I think history is really important. I would say that. I'm biased, and a history teacher would use the word biased. This is my curriculum. So John's talked about IGCSEs and AS and A-levels. These are stepping stones. Essentially, it gets harder as you go through. And because I'm in charge of a number of history teachers, I get to choose what we do. NCA tends to be quite linear. They tend to have quite a small focus. I want my kids to do a little bit of everything. And I want you to go into the world knowing something about the history of other nations and other cultures. So I think there should be some European, there should be some American, but there should also be something that you haven't done. So I choose to do India or the Russian Revolution. I want you to have a broad historical education. I don't want you doing World War I and Gallipoli for 2 years. It's no fun. I talk about students having a historical epiphany. That's when they've studied enough history that they can understand how something that happened in America there is because of something that was happening in Russia here, or the fact that our history in New Zealand is also really, really linked into what was happening in India or what was happening in America. This is called thematic history. You learn your history. Learning history is really important. I'll probably stop now because I'm boring people. But it's my subject, and I love it. If I think about why I love my subject, I love a good story, and the old adage that truth is stranger than fiction is very much the case. When it comes to teaching my subject, I like telling a story, and the fact that I'm teaching skills through those stories are even better. A good historian is going to learn to interpret things. A good historian is going to learn to analyze things. A good historian knows the lessons of history because we're just on one repeating cycle. Max, last year when we were doing an American history, we may have talked quite a lot about President Trump, but there's nothing new. It's all happened before, and it will keep happening time and time again. History for me is the subject that does that. So I think that's me, which means I can finally get off the stage. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Andrew. We've heard from a teacher. It's now time to hear from some of the students. So can I please invite our 4 student representatives up here on stage, and we're going to have a bit of a live panel discussion. Up you come, the students. I'm glad to say, Andrew, that I touted you as a comedian entertainer. I think you delivered as well, which was good. We'll just move that down. Thank you. Okay. I'm happy to stand. So, these events are special for me because I get to meet the students, as Andrew just said, that we've been dealing with online. And so it's always exciting for us to have some in-person discussions. And it's exciting for me to see a growing Auckland cohort. We're almost at the stage where we can start hosting physical meetups and adding that extra layer to this online learning. So, in front of us we've got Jade, Gavin, Max, and Caleb, and we'll just hear a little bit about their lives. So I wanted to start by just asking you guys to introduce yourselves. So should we start down this end with you, Caleb, because you're looking away? And do you want to just tell us, I think I do have another career as a teacher, maybe, yeah, we'll see. Yeah, classroom control, that's right, very good. So Caleb, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you're interested in, and what you study at CGA?
Cool. So I'm Caleb, and I'm 14, turning 15 in April. I have a range of interests. I enjoy music, and this year hopefully I can get into a bit more sport, one of them particularly being basketball. I play a lot of instruments, which is why CGA appealed to me. I might be talking about that later. I do dance, I like to read, other sorts of things, and this year I'm doing AS, so I'm going to be doing math, English literature, economics, and physics. Yeah, so that's me.
Caleb? Max?
Hi, I'm Max. I'm 13. I live in Wanaka in the South Island. I am studying maths, English, economics, French, and history, and my hobbies are sports, so rowing and cycling, and I also like to read.
Thanks, Max. Gavin?
Hello, I'm Gavin. I'm 16. I'm part-time student, And firstly, I'd like to say Happy Chinese New Year. 新年快乐. 恭喜发财. Although that was actually yesterday, so it's a little late. But I'll tell you what's not too late, joining CGA. That was a good one. You know you like that. And so I'm taking AS Maths and GCSE Chemistry this year.
Thanks. And last but not least, Jade.
Hi, I'm Jade. I'm 15 from Kerikeri in Northland, and I like doing ballet, maybe playing video games and watching Netflix, and I'm taking AS Economics, Chemistry, Physics, Maths, English, and AP Computer Science.
Wow. So I want to start by understanding a little bit about what your day-to-day lives look like. So we've got 3 full-time students, 1 part-time, one that Jade was part-time and has now just come full-time. So we'll start with you, Jade. Can we maybe go back to last year? How many subjects were you studying in addition to your regular school?
So yeah, last year I was still going to my regular school, but with CGA I took English, Maths, Physics and Chemistry, and then towards the end of the year I also picked up AP Computer Science.
So run us through that. So you get to school at, 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. You leave at what time?
So I'd leave at 3,
Yep.
and then I'd get home, depending if I had anything after school, at maybe 4 to 5:30, which is just in time for my classes.
Yep.
And then from there I'd have, I think, about two hours of classes on average, maybe 3.
Yep.
And then I just go through that, and then by the end you're quite tired, but just get that last little bit of work done and off to bed.
And so what's the differences between you come from, say, a traditional learning environment and then come also online in the afternoons and evenings? What's some of the differences, do you reckon?
I found that at my normal school it became more of a social time for me. CGA really pushed me academically, and that meant I could use my time at brick and mortar just to enjoy myself. And then CGA is where I could, I don't know, actually get the school done.
And Gavin, I want to ask you that same question. What are the differences have you seen still being a part-time student now?
So at part-time school, you can really see the comparison between the maybe students that were forced to go to your brick and mortar school as opposed to CGA, where everyone is not forced but rather chosen by themselves that they wanted to go to CGA. You can really see the difference between the aspirations, where at school people might be even falling asleep. Some might be even leaving school during school time,
Yep.
maybe a little naughty.
Yep.
With CGA you can't really leave because the teacher will just probably bring you back in.
And Max, I want to go to you and ask, what were you thinking as you signed up to CGA? Were you nervous when you first started?
Well, definitely nervous. I mean, I'd signed up just after lockdown, actually. So I kind of found online learning for me was a bit more engaging, and I got more done. So that meant that when I saw CGA, I found it was an opportunity to more exploit that online learning type education.
Yep.
And so that was kind of why I went for
What were you
CGA.
most nervous about and then most excited about? Go with nervous first.
Nervous, probably how I was going to actually manage my time. For me, that was definitely one of my biggest challenges. And then also how was gonna make friends and socialize outside of that.
And how have you found both of those things now?
A lot easier than I
Really?
thought at
Yep.
first. Like, for me, sport outside of CGA is a very good social aspect of my life. And then inside of CGA, there's a lot of platforms that allow you to interact with other students. So Slack, for example, Zoom, you can create your own Zoom meeting outside of class to just chat with your friends face-to-face, well, as much as you can.
Yep.
And yeah, I just found there were so many opportunities that allowed you to make friends, yeah.
And then what were you most excited about coming in?
Most excited about was probably pushing myself academically, going and doing harder level than what I was originally doing at brick and mortar school, and that meant that I was quite excited about that, and yeah.
Yep. Okay. Caleb, I want to hear, what's your favourite subject at CGA? If you had to choose, and bearing in mind there is a history teacher here, but... I see what you said. Okay. Caleb?
Well, you
Favourite subject?
decided to give me the worst question possible.
I did, I know. I'm picking on you today. So, favourite subject?
I'm going to go with the only option possible, which is just saying that I enjoy different aspects of every subject.
Maybe
You're all
a future
waiting for it.
politician. Maybe.
You're all waiting for it.
Okay. Can you choose one of your subjects and maybe
Okay.
describe what it looks like? Like when you start, you know, so let's choose, what do you want to choose?
Okay, I'll choose English.
Okay, you choose English. So, you know, a few times a week, you log on and you do your English class. What happens, right? Like you start your class, you log into Zoom, your teachers are there. How does it actually work?
So once we get into the class, for example, my AS teacher is Mr. Walker, and he's quite a conversational person. So we might have a little talk to you. For example, there was one day where he decided he wanted to show us his bookcase, and his room is basically a bookcase.
A born English teacher, wasn't he?
So yeah, lots of books. And we just, we had a little chat about what sort of books we like before we got into our actual work. So we always have a little conversation or converse or, say hi, share a high or low of the week, something like that, or something that you've been doing over the weekend that was fun. And then we'll get into the work, and specifically for English, it's very interactive. We're constantly being asked questions. He'll delve into our understandings, could you explain, what do you think about this? Do you think he could be possibly the poet is trying to convey this idea? And we always have our mics off so we can constantly, whenever we think of an idea, we can contribute to the class. And then that happens for a while. Sometimes, for example, in math, we'd have a random math game just to stimulate our brains.
Yep.
Or things like that. So,
and have you found that transition from going from a physical school? Because where did you go to school before CGA?
Yeah, I went to City Impact. So it's like a church school on East Coast Road.
Yep. And what are the main differences that you found, say, in the classroom?
Probably the teachers and the students, because I feel like back in City Impact, it was I was on cruise control, if you know what I mean, just doing things as it comes. I'm not going to do anything unless my teacher's oh, you got to do this question. But now I'm always eager, what can I do next? How can my teachers help me?
Yeah, I love it. And so I want to go to, where are you guys heading? What do you think? And I know, you're young and still figuring this all out, but Jade, do you have any idea of the direction you want to take in life?
I think I definitely want to go overseas and probably look into computer science because I really think there's a lot happening there.
Okay, Gavin?
Probably with a similar trajectory. Computer science is very popular. However, you never know. Things will always change. For example, last year, after I discovered the Big Bang Theory, I was very into physics because of Sheldon Cooper, etc., etc. And before that, when I was younger, I even wanted to become an architect. So it just shows this transition between things that are not even remotely connected and how they can develop over time.
Yep.
But at this point in stage, computer science, yes.
Okay, Max?
Definitely try and find a career in sport to start off with.
Yep.
And then maybe going into the whole business side of things, entrepreneurship.
Yep.
Yeah, quite
Love it.
interested in that.
Love it. And Caleb?
Probably a more niche market, but from a very early age, I've loved cars, and really loved cars. Finding out the random ass facts that no one really wants to know about the car.
Yep.
But I was that one person spouting off about when there's a car go past. Oh yeah, that's that one. There's this new talking about how the designer decided. Watching videos about BMW designers and how they actually made their cars, like humans.
Yep.
I was really interested in that, and I also took great interest in art. So I decided, I found out there was car design, and I think that was a passion that I wanted to pursue.
Very interesting, very broad range. So, Gavin, how have you found interacting with your peers at CGA? Do you talk much outside of class, or what does that look like?
As seen with these four, we have we have several different connections outside of the classroom. So we're not just talking because you're forced to. We talk outside our own time with our own interests. We even have esports.
Love it.
And so one of them is like, for example, the popular Discord. We have like our own little CGA Discord where we just talk, play around with some memes, and just overall have a good time.
So, do you think anything's lacking in terms of that connection with other people in the school, or, is that there?
I think it's certainly there. You just have to kind of dip your foot in, and once you dip your foot in, you kind of get pulled in and there's no going back.
Jade, I want to ask, what do you think CGA has taught you, just not just in terms of your subjects and your academics, but like how have you grown in the last year doing all this study, exploring with new friendships and different career interests and so on? What do you think, how have you grown in the last year or so?
Well, you pulled up that list of qualities prospective students should have, and I was looking at that and thinking, oh my gosh, I know I didn't come in having nearly as many as I should, but I think being in the school has definitely let me develop those, It's forced me to be more self-motivated and manage myself a lot better. It's also helped me learn better to connect in the digital environment, which I think in the future will be really important. But, establishing like connections with teachers and friendships, it's something I've learned being at CGA, and it's been really nice and really valuable.
I'm going to actually put it to the audience and say, does anyone have a question for any of our students that are here? Does anyone want to volunteer anything? I've got plenty to ask, but wondered if you guys have got anything you'd like to. Anything at all? No? Quiet audience today? Yes. Yes, okay. Do you want to say, should we go to Max maybe? What does homework look like for you?
Well, for me, homework is you're given it at the end of class or at start class. You'll be given a sheet with it written on, and you'll finish class. You'll probably, first of all, find a time to do it. It's generally, when you get into the flow of things, you can get quite a lot of homework sometimes.
Yep.
And other times not so much. But
So on average, what do you reckon you'd get per subject, per hour, hours per week? So in one of your classes, roughly?
in one of our
changes?
classes, probably per week, I don't know. Depends how fast you do it, but probably about
A couple of hours?
3 hours,
Okay.
2 hours.
And when do you
a week.
typically do that? Is it, in the weekend or in the mornings or in the afternoons or evenings? What does that look like for you?
Well, last year for me, it was kind of around the middle of the day.
Okay.
Or in the morning, trying to cram it in before the lesson.
Yep.
But yeah, this year I've got classes basically start for me at 10:45, so I do homework probably from between 8:45 to 10 then.
Okay, so the timetable is slightly different than what it might be in a regular school, say. So, Caleb, when do you do your homework, typically? I hope you do your homework, but I'm sure you don't.
Yeah, when I do my homework, which is always, I think there's been some scientific studies that your brain functions best and you remember most in the morning.
Yep.
So I normally get up about 5:30.
Wow.
I try my best, and probably downstairs just before 6, and that's when I do my homework. My main homework we chunked in there, and just because I start school at 10:45 as well, and I also got to fit in instruments and practice before
the learning. Okay. Does that answer your question a little bit about homework? Was there anything else about homework you wanted to know?
Yeah, I would just actually like to
go
add
for it,
on to
Gavin.
that. Yeah, especially seeing as there's kind of this Asian perspective on learning where you have to go very rigorous, very fast, and basically not give the child little to no free time, make sure they're always learning and studying. I can assure you that CGA gives, your child will have plenty of homework to do.
But plenty of spare time as well, I'm sure. A healthy balance, is that right?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, great. Well, that's good. Do we have any other questions from the audience? It's a great one about homework. Anything else? That's a great question, and we're hearing more about that shortly. We're really just launching our extracurricular program, but do you guys want to talk about maybe the esports and what that looks like? Who's leading that in the squad, would you say? Who's most involved? Caleb or Gavin? Jade? Gavin, do you want to say, what does esports look like for you guys?
So currently it's just still a relatively new group. We are still just growing. I think we have somewhere around 15 members, somewhere around there. Yeah, and in fact, a very regular member is Mr. Veden himself. Yes, and so that's still growing. I think the current, the game of choice is Valorant at the moment because it's free and very,
And is the goal to try and compete as a school team in the future?
I think that's what we're trying to get at the moment.
In the future,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. I can tell you that actually behind the scenes we're working on some competitions as well for you guys. So we've identified that and know that there's something coming there. Yeah, that's a very, very good question. So that's extracurriculars. Anything else from the audience? Anything else? Okay. Well, can we all give a big round of applause to our wonderful students? Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks so much, guys. You can leave your microphones on your chairs and sit down. Thank you very much. Okay. And then thank you very much, guys. Last but not least, we will go to the wonderful Mr. Wong, who's a champion debater, a world-class speaker, but more importantly, a great technologist. So I'll pass to Mr. Wong to talk through, and I lovingly call him Mr. Wong because he's not only a friend of mine and a colleague, but I believe that he's a budding future principal as well. So I do lovingly call him Mr. Wong. I'll pass to you.
Hi, Praise. Thanks, everyone. My name's Zach, or Mr. Wong, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I'm kind of our product and technology lead here at CGA, so helping to build some of the technology we use. And so I guess I just wanted to start a little bit by setting the scene and talk about why actually does the technology we use matter? And I think when we look at the world around us, there's been rapid innovation in almost every part of how we live our lives. We've stopped using taxis, we started using Ubers, we've stopped watching TV, we're streaming on Netflix. And if you've been following the news recently, you may have discovered you can buy shares online just through your phone and trade on the financial markets. But I think if you look at education, education hasn't kept up with the same rapid pace of innovation. Yes, maybe compared to 50 years ago, we've moved from chalkboards to projectors and we might be taking notes on a computer. But the fundamentals of how education works hasn't changed. You wake up, you go to school, you sit in classes for 6 hours a day and have lunch in between. But really what works for someone else's child might not work for your child. And so it's the power of technology that's helping us to bring personalisation to a student's learning journey at CGA. Combining that with the power of data and analytics, we can help make more personalised recommendations, predictions about student success, and start to develop a much more personalised journey for a student and how they're learning, rather than just the standard course that the education system tells you that must follow. But also, schools are not simply preparing students well enough for our digital workforce. If you think about the vast majority of the work that we do today is on computers and devices rather than on pen and paper. And so through the use of technology and some of the best digital tools around, CGA is able to much better prepare students for what working life is. So what makes technology different at CGA? And I think the biggest thing about CGA is that we're digital first. And I'm sure many of you had really bad online learning experiences when your schools had to go online during lockdown. But for those schools, digital learning is not what they're built on and not what they do. Often they just sent their teachers off to try and do the same things that they did in a physical classroom and try and do those online. And so those teachers didn't have the support and training to make the experience better. But at CGA, we've designed our technology infrastructure from the ground up to be digital first and designed to support teaching and learning online, making the best use of that in the classroom environment. And so we've got a few different components to how that works. And the first is that we use best-in-class technology tools that are built and designed for digital learning. So to give you some examples, the first is Canvas, is the world's leading learning management system used at institutions like Harvard and Yale, and is our central hub for student homework, communication, and resources. We also use things like the OneNote class notebook, which sits at the heart of our teaching and learning and facilitates how students and teachers collaborate together, share their work, and work in an interactive environment. And even within our subjects, we use the best tools for the job, whether it be My iMaths for mathematics, ActiveLearn for science, or Kami for annotating poems in English. But where we're also different is that these best-in-class digital tools are connected by what's called the Crimson app. And the Crimson app is Crimson's own in-house technology platform. And the biggest difference here is it allows us to develop features for CGA that no other school has. Because sitting behind that is our technology team. And unlike a normal school, CGA just isn't a user of technology, but we're a creator of technology. And so we've got a team of 20 software developers who are working behind the scenes to make the experience better for our students. And so leveraging the global nature of our technology team with staff based in Silicon Valley, Shanghai, Melbourne, and New Zealand, we're able to learn from some of the world's best technology companies in order to develop software that suits the needs of our students. And something else that you might find different about how CGA operates is that often traditional schools are really afraid of change, but at CGA we embrace change to continually improve our technology to meet the needs of our community of students, parents and teachers. Just think about in your normal school. Has your school ever sat you down and asked you what you thought they could do better or how they could make changes? Because at CGA we're different because we place the users, that's you, students, parents and our teachers as well, at the heart of what we do. And so we talk to our users, understand their needs and problems, and work with them to develop solutions to what they're doing in the classroom. So what are we actually doing in technology and in the space? The first is we're thinking about how we can change reporting and progress tracking for students in school. And so unlike just traditional reporting, we keep parents informed with weekly summaries of student progress, covering things like attendance, homework grades and upcoming tasks, so you can stay connected to what your child is learning in school. But secondly, we're also at the cutting edge of measuring student engagement. Student engagement refers to the degree of attention, curiosity, interest, optimism and passion that students show when they are learning or being taught. And one of the keys to academic improvement is not just how much time you're spending on something or what the teaching's like, but actually how engaged the students are with their learning. And so the more engaged a student is, the more likely they are to achieve academic success. And so the first thing we're doing as a school is we're thinking about how schools can measure and improve student engagement, leveraging the power of technology and analytics to understand how engaged a student is. And so we've got some examples on the screen about how we're doing that. So the first on the left is what we call how we're tracking lesson participation. And so something really important at CGA, and you heard this from Mr. Carlsberg before, is about how students interact and participate in the classroom. And so we've just recently released the ability to track how much students are engaging in the classroom through how much they're talking. And so this is used as a tool for reflection. Students can think about, is there something that they were finding difficult in class that meant they weren't talking less? Or are there other things going on that they need? These tools are really great for thinking about reflecting on how you're doing, but also thinking about how we can better support students. So if students have less engagement in how they're feeling, then maybe they need some more support around their learning. They might need a tutor or additional assistance and support. We've got some other things that we're exploring. The first one here in the middle is tracking how students are feeling. So what we're hoping to do is to track how students, whether they're happy or confused or how they're feeling in class, we can draw insights into how they're doing. And a teacher can maybe reflect if there are a few students who were confused, how they might revise that topic or cover it in detail. The thing here on the right is an exploratory area for us and thinking about how we can measure attention of students in class. So we've got the green light is following the pupils, if you can see that behind us. And so that's thinking about, are we able to use technology to see whether students are paying attention to their computers or whether they're acting off task in class? So this is just exploratory stuff. The stuff on the right is exploratory. We're looking to do research and understand how much of that we can use to help measure and get a better understanding of student engagement in the classroom. The second thing which I'm really excited to share that we're working on is called Crimson Classroom. Currently we use Zoom for our lessons, and that's a platform many of you will be familiar with. But we're exploring the Crimson Classroom, which will be in the coming months. And so we're developing Crimson Classroom to enhance the everyday learning experience of our students. And why is that? The problem with a lot of current video calling tools is they were originally designed for video conferencing and business meetings, not necessary for classroom teaching. And so we're starting Crimson Classroom from scratch so that we can build our teaching tools from the ground up. And some of the ways we're doing that, this is a design for something called team rooms. So, for example, this is a way for how students can work together in the classroom, but still let the teacher see exactly what's going on. Secondly, we're looking at things like having persistent rooms. So you've got IG Biology and IG English Literature. So places students can go after class to carry on their discussion, or a place that they might go and study and hang out with other students from their classes. So what we're doing with Clemson Classroom is taking the best of what we see out there in the world today, so Zoom and other technologies like Google Meet and Teams, and thinking about how we can best adapt those to be used in the classroom so that our teachers have the best experience. The other power of this tool is that through Crimson Classroom, we're going to be able to integrate better with our other tools. Whereas Zoom's currently a standalone platform, what we're going to do is bring Canvas, the Crimson app, and other tools right to the fingertips of our students. The final area that we're really excited about is thinking about community and how we support our students. And so we had a question before about extracurricular activities. And so I think at Crimson, CGA, we've got the opportunity to have some really powerful extracurricular activities. Firstly, we've got the Crimson Network. So unlike in your traditional school, we can connect students with world-class coaches and mentors based around the world. Secondly, we've got global scale. So you can actually have a Model United Nations event with students from different countries around the world rather than just pretending that you are all from different countries. Finally, we're future-focused. So we're focused on extracurriculars, which are linked to future skills and future employment. So that actually the types of things that students are doing will help them, give them soft skills or hard skills that they can take with them. And so on the screen there, I'll come back to this actually. So on here you can see some of the extracurricular clubs and activities that we have. We've got a few launching this February as well at the end of the month. A couple of things I'd like to highlight. We've got our 3D game development club and web development club, so helping students really learn those kind of essential skills for computer science and in a much more practical setting. We've got our investment club, and that's being led by a fund manager out of Singapore whose day-to-day job is managing people's funds. So that's part of how we can connect students at CGA to some of the world's best talent to give them real and meaningful insights into what's going on. We're also really excited for a new platform that will also be launching in April, which is the Crimson Community. And so the Crimson Community is a place for students from both CGA and the wider Crimson Education Network to come together and meet with each other in different interest groups. So you might have different interest groups ranging from kind of university applications to technology or mathematics or gaming. And through this platform, students are going to be able to host events, conduct discussions with each other. Also through the power of the Crimson Network, we've got experts who are based in universities overseas. So in our investment group, students are going to be able to ask investment experts about what kind of advice they would get there. Or in debating, we'll connect students to world-class coaches who can answer their basic questions about that. So this platform is part of the Crimson app, and we're really excited to be able to bring that to the CGA student experience. But beyond that, in community, it's not just the technology that underpins it, it's also the people. And you might think that being at home might be a little bit isolating and you don't have a support network around you, but actually students at CGA have a wide range of people that they can go to for support and advice, from their peers to their classroom teachers. We have academic deans who help support students. We have ECL coaches and mentors who help lead our programs. We have our university and careers guidance program where students can get insights into different careers that might attract them. And so all this is brought together through different platforms that students can use to communicate with the school, whether it be through email or through our student Slack community where students can message each other and participate in group discussions, or seek help from not only just the school staff, but seek help from their peers to use the technology and the systems around them. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of insight into how we're using technology at CGA. I think the real power that we have through technology is to help personalize the experience of students, because we think education is ripe for disruption and innovation, and we're really excited to be at the heart of that, blending the world-class experience of our teachers who've had decades of experience teaching in the classroom with some modern innovations in technology. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, former Principal Wong. Or not former, future Principal Wong, I should say. So that concludes our CGA Open Day, or the formal piece of it. I hope you've had a bit of insight into really what it looks like from the teachers, from the students, from the academic leaders, from our technology powerhouses, and really how this is something that's not that different from what you've already experienced, but also supercharged and so different at the same time. To conclude today, we've got a number of exciting things, most importantly, food. But otherwise, we've also got a number of people that will be positioned over here to answer your questions. So if you'd like to come talk to Jamie, to John, to some of our teachers or our academic advisors who can talk about subject choice and what CGA and how it could work for you, you're welcome to come over to this area where we'll be hanging around. I won't take up any more of your time, but thanks again for taking so much time. We've got a wonderful exhibition area out here where there's a number of other areas, whether it be the food or some other booths with teachers. One exciting thing is we've got some live students on a call as well. So some students from Japan and from Malaysia are actually dialing in to come and talk to you guys if you'd like to hang around and talk to them. So again, thanks for listening for what has been a long presentation, but hopefully quite exciting, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.